Star Wars, the expanded universe. A universe so vast that has over 17,000 characters from various different eras, from Dawn of the Jedi to the Old Republic, to the prequels all the way to the Legacy era. This is the tale of over 17,000 characters throughout the Star Wars universe. This is our first step to a much larger world that exists in the Star Wars universe. This is the story beyond the movies. This is the story of the Star Wars expanded universe. A universe loved by many. A universe that helped shape what this franchise is today. This is their story.
Hello everyone, Darcenovia here. This is another review by yours truly. This time we're going back into the post-Return of the Jedi era, the first time in a while, and we're going to talk about Truce of Bakura. This novel takes place directly after Return of the Jedi, and I mean right after. If you watch the movie and you want another adventure, but this is it. This takes place right after Return of the Jedi, chronologically. And this is when Star Wars novels, started popping up left and right, actually, in the 1990s. You had the Jedi Academy trilogy, you had Truce of Bakura, you had a year later, you'd have Junior and Young Jedi Knights. Star Wars was popular again. It was slowly going back into pop culture. So what was originally supposed to be 3 books turned into a lot more than that. And this was one of the books that was published as a result. Now, how's the story? How does it hold up? Well, I think it's good, in my opinion. I mean, it's one of the first novels to get published after the Thrawn trilogy, which it's kind of hard to live up to that. So there's some people, unfortunately, when they review Star Wars novels, they kind of compare them to the Thrawn trilogy, but that's a video for another day. I feel like this book is a good story on its own, and I feel like if you're new to Star Wars novels, I feel like this would be a good place to start with. It's a good story. I feel like it's cool to see more adventures with our favorite characters. Though, would I recommend reading this first? No. Read the Thrawn trilogy. Truce of Bakura is one of the first cases where you see a truce with the Empire and the Rebellion, even though it did go south towards the end of the novel. And you saw people who believe in the Force but have different views of it. Or who don't really trust the Jedi, and this is one of them. Truce of Bakura, Kathy Travers wrote this. I think she's a good writer. I liked everything I've read from her so far. And I feel like this book is no exceptions. There's the only negative I could say though is there's no Lando, which unfortunately I don't know what the hell EU writers have against Lando. He's fucking awesome. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. This is also the first occurrence where you see Leia, coming to the realization that her father is Darth Vader. Because you see it in the movie, but they don't really dwell on it much. But in here it gets into more detail. And I feel like her reluctance to accept Darth Vader as her father and to forgive him sets up a good story later on, which I can't tell if Tatooine Ghost is a good book. I hear mixed opinions about it, so I'll have to give my thoughts on it when I review it later. But I do feel like it does set up for stories later on, and unfortunately, this is the only negative I could say, which this could also apply to some of the other books. This is one of the first occasions where Luke has like first of many love interests before he actually settles down, and Gabrielle Kepson is one of those. How is she as a character? She wasn't bad. I mean, I was introduced to her through the Canolian trilogy, and I do see it was interesting seeing a different point of view of the Force, and it did make you kind of feel bad for Luke, at the end because things didn't work out. But to be honest, as someone who's read like all the way past that, because I'm used to Mara Jade as Luke's, wife, and I see Mara Jade as the one and only person for Luke. I didn't really, care that much, even though I do feel bad for Luke at this point because, all the stuff he's went through. His father dying, finding out that Leia is his sister, which that must feel awkward. Incest joke. Sorry about that. Couldn't resist. Nearly getting killed by the Emperor. It's like Luke has been through a lot of shit, and it's not even like a week, honestly. And the Bakurans, do have some differences with the, they're the kind of people that don't really want to be pushed around, and and I'm not gonna give out too much, but let's just say that Luke's love interest in this novel, at first don't see eye to eye, but they come to a mutual understanding, towards the end of this book, because they both have something in common. They both have their duty. Luke has his duty to the Alliance and reviving the Jedi. Gabrielle Cripston has her duty to her people, and that's what actually makes it so their relationship can't work out. Which this is one thing that I do think this was good development. Actually, some of the stuff that Luke and Leia went through in this novel, it set them up for future stories, and I did feel like they handled the characters right. Which one of the things I will have to complain about in Bantam is I don't like the way they handled Luke Skywalker, honestly, and I feel like how authors handled his character, like because Han is vastly more popular. It seems like which I'll get to that later, Han Solo seems the character that everyone favors when they're writing with the big three in there. I feel like Cappy Travers does a good job at balancing the screen time out between the characters, where it doesn't feel like one character is overshadowing the other, and etc. Every character, I feel like is written the way they're supposed to, and that's something that I'm happy with. Truce Bakura does a good job with the way they handle the characters in general, the continuity between this and the movie. I feel like if you were to start from the timeline, this wouldn't be a bad place to start. It's a good story. It's a good standalone novel because, in my opinion, I don't think everyone should start off with a trilogy, in my opinion. Or if you're one of those people that doesn't really want to read a trilogy to start off the Star Wars Expanded Universe, but they want a good story that's standalone. Well, this is one of them. I guarantee you that. Is it one of the best books of the Star Wars Expanded Universe? No. Is it one of the best books in the Bantam era? Yes. This book, I give this a good rating. It's a good book. If you're curious about Bakura or the Sarah Rack or any stuff that gets mentioned in any other parts of the timeline, such as New Jedi Order, I feel like reading this would actually enrich some of those stories. Though I don't think it's required. Truce of Bakura, some think it's not necessary, that it is kind of pointless in the timeline. I have to disagree, because the Canolian trilogy, Gabrielle Cribson, appears in this novel, and she's one of Luke's, first love interests, as far as I know. Forgive me if I make a mistake. I mean, the Star Wars Expanded Universe is so massive that Luke probably had like 4 or 5 more billion love interests before he actually settles down for Mora Jade. So I might have missed a few. But anyway, this is a good novel. It's a good read. I highly recommend it. And that's all I have to say, honestly. Now, for my next video, other than The Force Awakens. What the fuck am I talking about for Force Awakens? Other than the Phantom Menace novelization, my next video, well, it's going to come off as a surprise. It'll be something a little different. So, this is Darcenovia. Over and out. May the Force be with you. And that's all I have to say. That's a wrap.